Hey everyone, Sylvie here. This is going to be part 2 of my dream state video. I'm sorry that it took me longer than I promised to get the second part of this video out. I actually lost my voice for a couple of days, and I'm probably still not sounding 100%, so once again, please try to bear with me. I apologize for the raspiness, or I sound like I'm talking out of my nose. Anyway, I really want to get this video out for you guys regardless, because I have all of this stuff floating around in my head all the time, and it's very helpful for me to get it posted for you in videos. Okay, now if you haven't gone and watched part 1 of my video, The Dream State, please do go ahead and watch that first. I'm not really going to backtrack on that video a whole lot. That video was mostly about recurring dreams, lucid dreams, and just a little bit on precognitive dreams. It was mostly my personal experiences, a few interjections on some basic understanding of those various dream states. So just very briefly, if you do not want to go back and watch part 1, precognitive dreams are dreams of events that have not yet played out in reality. So basically, you have a dream of some event. In my experiences, they're usually relatively mundane events. And then sometime on down the road, that exact event with the language, the words, the surroundings, the people, everything will play out in your reality. Many people throughout the history of the world have claimed to have precognitive dreams. Some people claim to have them of major events and things of that nature. That is not how it happens for me. If you have precognitive dreams and you do have dreams of major events, natural disasters, things of that nature, then that's great for you. I'm not being sarcastic by saying that. I actually genuinely mean that. That's wonderful. In my case, the majority of my precognitive dreams are directly related to me, or directly related to the people that I care about. In my experiences, I have not been able to purposely have precognitive dreams. I am not able to lay myself down at night and say, okay, I'm going to have a precognitive dream tonight. I have tried. I definitely have tried, but it has never played out that way. The majority of the time, well, actually all of the time for me, they just happen. The dream just happens, and like I mentioned in the first part of the video, I have gotten to the point where I am able to recognize the difference between a regular lucid dream and an actual precognitive dream. They just appear different to me. The lucid dreams feel a little bit more dreamy, even though they're very realistic, whereas the precognitive dreams feel like I'm in the situation. Like I feel like I could be sitting there actually doing those things. A lot of the way that I feel when I see visions of certain events. I had explained in my first video that I realized when I was about 16 years old that my quote-unquote deja vu experiences were actually coming from dreams. So that was the first time that I was actually able to make the connection that I was dreaming the events that I was reliving. I'm not actually going to go too terribly in depth into precognitive dreams in this video, because that could actually be a relatively convoluted subject. And I'm sure that there's just tons of research. I'm sure tons of people have already discussed this. So I'm basically just trying to give you guys a little bit of an idea of the experiences that I have. And I'm also interested to know what experiences you have. So if you have precognitive dreams, please let me know that down in the comments. I would be interested to know what kind of experiences you have. So I had mentioned when I was 31 was basically the time that I had gotten to the point where I was able to tell the difference of what my precognitive dreams actually were. Like I was in the dream state, I was able to see, oh, this is a precognitive dream. This is going to play out in my reality at some point in the future. Now, I can't say for sure about any of the dreams that I had before that point, any of the precognitive dreams that I had before that point, before I realized the difference. I cannot say 100% that every single one of those precognitive dreams had played out in my reality, although I believe that they did. But from that point on, from the time I was approximately 31 until now, I can tell you 100% for sure that every single precognitive dream I have ever had has eventually played out in my reality. And once again, these are usually very commonplace situations. So it's, maybe you're sitting in your friend's living room and you guys are watching some show on TV and you're laughing and you're having a good time. Or maybe it's not always good. So maybe you have a dream that you get fired. Maybe your boss just brings you into his office and really reams you. And like 2 weeks later, God forbid that happens. It's basically just stuff like that. And I'm not saying getting fired is a mundane event, but in the grand scheme of life, it kind of is. But anyway, I just want to quickly tell you guys about one time when my precognitive dream, I'm 100% certain it was a precognitive dream, but it did not actually play out exactly the way that I thought that it was going to play out. And I was surprised by that. And it's the only time that it's ever happened to me, and it hasn't happened to me since. But I have a theory on why it happened, but the theory is actually a topic for another video. So I'll go into that in greater length than something else. But I have to be honest, I'm a little bit hesitant to share this experience because I don't really want to hear the potential negative comments that I'm going to get from people. But I'm going to share it with you anyway because I want people to see that, the kind of things that can happen with the things that I experience. So long story short, I'm not going to go into the details of it because it'd be way too long of a story, but long story short, I was falsely accused of theft by a former employer. I only worked for him for a few years. I had already moved on to another job. Basically what it came down to is that I was the office manager and the bookkeeper at this company, and I discovered that the owner had been embezzling from his own company for years, for long before I had been working there. He had committed tax fraud, he had committed tax evasion, he paid himself a weekly paycheck, but then he also paid for personal expenses out of his business, like he would pay for trips, he would pay for alcohol, really very inappropriate things that he would be buying out of his business account. So essentially one day in May of 2018, I confronted him and he got extremely angry. He fired me, he threatened me, and he attempted to assault me. And I got away. I did not get hurt. I got away. I went to the police. I filed a report. Ultimately, the police took my report and they asked me if I wanted him to be arrested, and I should have said yes, but I was trying to be the better person and I said no. I just wanted the report filed, but ultimately no charges were filed against him for anything, for the embezzling, for the assault, for anything. Well, I pretty much just went on with my life, except for I did report him to the IRS. Because he had committed tax evasion and tax fraud, and it was blatantly obvious that he had done so, and I had the bookwork to prove it. So anyway, about 6 months went by, and all of a sudden I get a letter from a lawyer saying that I have been charged with felony theft. So I checked my public records, and sure enough, there was a charge on there. So that led to court proceedings. I took responsibility. I was innocent, 100% innocent. It was absolutely ridiculous, but I took responsibility. I turned myself in and I was forced to go into the court system to try to plead my case. Well, a little bit of a spoiler here. I did not go to jail or anything like that. And I'll actually explain to you why I wasn't even terribly concerned about it in the first place. So relatively early on, just, maybe 1 or 2 court dates in, because I would go to court basically once a month and it would just be, oh, this is the status of the case. And then it would get prolonged for another month. And this went on for nearly 2 years. Well, very early on in the situation, I had a precognitive dream. And in the dream, I was in the hallway of the courthouse. It was the day of my trial, and I was getting ready to go into the actual courtroom itself, and my lawyer stopped me in the hall, and he told me the case is not going to go forward. And I was like, what do you mean? And he basically told me that the case was going to get dismissed because my former employer had died. And I know it sounds crazy, but he wasn't an older man, and he did have some health issues. So it wasn't really that weird to me that I had had a precognitive dream that my case was going to get dismissed because the quote-unquote main witness had passed away. Now, even without the precognitive dream, I was still pretty positive that the case was going to get dismissed because he didn't have anything. It was all lies. The only evidence that he had to show anybody was evidence of his own embezzling, which wasn't going to cause me a problem because I could prove that I didn't do any of that. So I was always pretty sure that the case was going to get dismissed anyway, but once I had that precognitive dream that it was going to be dismissed, that just took a load of weight off my shoulders, because then I felt like I didn't have to worry. I just needed to let it play out and that everything was going to be fine. Well, as time progressed and as we had to keep going through this trial, and I had to keep saying over and over and over again that this is ridiculous, I didn't do this is all false, yada, 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 I became increasingly more frustrated and angry because I couldn't believe that I was seriously having to go through this situation when he was the one who was doing these things. And I was positive that the only reason that he was accusing me is because he thought that that was going to keep the IRS from prosecuting him, because he thought if he could, basically he was trying to frame me for what he had been doing in his own business. So anyway, I didn't feel that that was right. I didn't want to just have the case dismissed. I didn't want him to die in the first place, you guys, okay? Like, I don't wish death on anyone. That's not a solution. That's not the way that you behave towards people who make you angry or people you don't like. So it's not like I wished for his death. I had just seen in my precognitive dream that he was going to die, and it didn't really surprise me. But I didn't want him to die, I didn't actually want him to pass away and just have nothing happen, because I know that it's a bit petty and it's a bit vindictive, but I was angry. He ruined he tried to ruin my life, and he did cause us a great deal of trouble, and he caused all kinds of stress and everything for my family for almost 2 years, and it was just ridiculous. Anyway, ultimately, I didn't want him to die. I didn't want anything to happen where he was just gonna, drift off into whatever and not have any consequences to what he did. At the very least, I wanted him to have to pay me back all the money that I had to spend, because I had to spend thousands of dollars on an attorney. And, I had to miss work, and it was just, I had to tell my current employer what was going on. It was absolutely awful. So I know that you shouldn't want revenge. But to a certain extent, I wanted revenge. I wanted him to at least have to take responsibility for the fact that he had falsely accused me of a crime, which is a crime in and of itself, by the way. So anyway, I really felt very, very strongly about that, I trusted my precognitive dream. I believed in my precognitive dream because they've always played out for me. But I was really just like, I don't really want that, I really don't want that. And I just kind of kept thinking that over and over. I want my case dismissed. Obviously, I want my case dismissed, but I don't want him to get away essentially scot-free. And I know that death isn't necessarily scot-free, but I think you can understand what I'm saying. So anyway, we get to 2 days before my trial, and I was not nervous because I was positive that I was going to walk in there and they were going to tell me that my case had been dismissed. But what actually ended up happening was I was at work 2 days before my trial, which was a Monday, and I went on my lunch break and I got an email from my lawyer that just said congratulations. And I was like, what is this? So I gave him a call, and he explained to me that the state's attorney that was representing the case had decided that there was insufficient evidence for the charges to even have been brought against me in the first place. And so my case had been dismissed by the state. Obviously, I was ecstatic. I was absolutely thrilled that my case had been dismissed before I ever even went to the courthouse for trial. That was the best news that I had had in my life in the longest time. But I was confused because I had never had a precognitive dream not play out in exactly the way that I had had the dream. So I was like, okay, my case was dismissed, but he didn't die. It just was insufficient evidence and everything. So I was really kind of confused as to what was going on. Well, then the next thing that my lawyer tells me is that even though he's a criminal lawyer, and he doesn't actually really handle those cases, he does have some friends who would be willing to help me with a civil lawsuit against my former employer, so that he would, at the very least, have to pay me back all of my attorney's fees that I had incurred during this case. They were going to help me recoup some of my costs. They were going to help me sue him for defamation, and they were going to help me get my record expunged. That was when it all made sense. Because yes, I had had my dream and it had played out in a certain way, but I was so adamant that I did not want him to die. I was so adamant that I did not want him to walk away without any repercussions to what he had done. So, like I said, I have some theories as to why that occurred. But it's something for another video, because it's actually a completely different topic. But I just found it fascinating that in all of my life, in all of, this was in 2000, well, actually, by the time the trial was dismissed, it was 2020, so it was only 2 years ago. So it was when I was 44. So all of my precognitive dreams up to that point had played out 100%, and this one was different. So I found that very, very interesting. And that actually kind of changed some things for me as well. That gave me a different perspective about reality and the various states that our consciousness can exist in, if you will. Okay, now I don't want this video to be too long, but I do want to give everyone just a couple of pointers or a couple of tips. If you would like to learn how to lucid dream, I mentioned in the first part of my video that anyone can do that. Okay, when I talk about these things, I kind of talk about them like they're gifts, like they're special, and I'm not saying that it's not. But at the same time, I do have a very firm belief that this is something that any human being can do. The things that I do, the things that I experience, I was very lucky in the sense that they just were kind of given to me. They're things that just happened to me. I didn't really try. I didn't really have to do a whole lot to make those things happen. But I do firmly believe that anyone can have these things happen. And some of the more convoluted things like precognitive dreams and speaking with spirits and things like that, I don't know that I would be able to teach you that. But I can give you some pointers on how to lucid dream. And if you are able to lucid dream, then I think that it will open up some other things in your consciousness that might make you realize that there are gifts that you have had all along that you just didn't realize. Okay, so I wanted to get into that just a little bit very quickly. So if you go out and you research lucid dreaming, there are tons of things about it. Okay, there's tons of things about what it is and how to do it and things of that nature. Just a very brief explanation, description, whatever, if you did not catch my first video. Lucid dreams are dreams that not only do you have basically the faculties of all of your senses, like 100% of your 5 senses, but you're also able to control the dream to a certain extent. So basically you're aware that you're in the dream state, and you're able to, at the very least, you're able to be fully aware that you're dreaming. But in a little bit stronger instances, you're going to be able to actually change and manipulate and dictate the way that you would like your dream to go. Okay, now one of the best ways that I can recommend that you try to do this is through meditation. And I have mentioned this before, and you do not have to be some weird mountaintop guru or anything like that to do meditation, okay? Meditation can be very in-depth. There can be chimes and chants and binaural tones and things like that. But it doesn't have to be all that, okay? It can really be just you getting yourself into a perfectly calm, relaxed state. And by perfectly calm, relaxed state, what I mean is that your body is fully relaxed. your mind is fully relaxed, and you are able to clear your thoughts. So a lot of times, at least for me, when I lay down and I try to quiet my mind, I have all of these thoughts bouncing around and bumping around in my head. And in order to clear those out, I have to literally decide, okay, I'm not going to think about anything else. And it's really, especially if you're an intelligent person, it's really difficult to not think about anything, to just think about nothing. But it is possible. So if you can clear your mind, regardless of how that is, if you can just lay yourself down in a comfortable position and fully relax your body, and you can just calm yourself to the point where your mind is quiet, that's great. But that doesn't always work for everyone. Sometimes those kind of things are very difficult. I do recommend meditation music. I not just because I have a channel for meditation music. I don't have very many videos over there anyway, but I do recommend that if you do have a problem getting yourself into that calm state. If you're first starting out, if you've never done meditation or tried to lucid dream or any of that, I would actually recommend that you first start with meditation sleep music. So there's tons of it out there on YouTube. You can buy it on Amazon. You can get it pretty much anywhere. But 90% of the time, it's just kind of tones or maybe soft music or something like that that you play at a relatively low level, and you just go to sleep to it. And it actually kind of conditions your mind to quiet itself. You get to a point where you're kind of only hearing the music, and then through only hearing the music, your mind calms, and then you're able to drift off into sleep. Now, essentially, when you're training yourself or trying to train yourself to lucid dream, that's exactly what you're trying to do. You're trying to get yourself into what people call a state akin to sleep. They call it SATS, S-A-T-S. And a state akin to sleep basically means that you are fully relaxed mind and body to the point where you could fall asleep, but you don't want to actually fall asleep. You want to keep enough of a conscious mind so that you are aware of what's happening and you are aware of your thoughts, or in this case, your lack thereof. So a lot of people have talked about this. The most famous person that I can think of that's talked about a state akin to sleep is Neville Goddard. Neville Goddard is somebody who is very famous for his discussions about the law of assumption. Once again, that's a topic for another video, but if you don't know who Neville Goddard is and you don't know about the law of assumption or the law of attraction, I would urge you to go out and take a look at that kind of stuff. It's a little bit different than what I'm talking about, but he uses the same techniques. So he uses this, what I'm talking about, a state akin to sleep. Basically, what you're trying to accomplish with meditation or with getting yourself into this state is you're trying to coerce your mind into recognizing the difference between your waking state and your dream state. So you have to be able to recognize that in your dream state if you want to be able to lucid dream. Now, this is something that's going to be different for every single person out there. So some people might do this a couple of times. They might try to lucid dream a couple of times, and then they start doing it. Other people might struggle for months. And it's just, it's all about you. It's all about your personal feelings, your personal beliefs, whether you're able to actually fully calm yourself, whether you're actually able to clear your mind. But there are various techniques outside of meditation that people do also recommend. People recommend keeping a dream journal. So every time you have a dream, when you wake up, immediately, have a notebook or something next to your bed so that you can write down your dream really quick. Sometimes that way you can recognize patterns in your dreams that will help you start to realize when you're dreaming and when you're not. Another technique that people recommend is basically trying to create yourself kind of like a quote-unquote trigger, like something to make your mind realize that you're in a dream. So maybe you start out dreaming and you don't realize you're dreaming, but somewhere in the dream you have an aha moment and you start to realize that you are dreaming. Now, that I do find somewhat useful, but once again, these are all different things that may or may not work for individual people, okay? But basically, if you're trying to train yourself in this manner, what you would want to do is you'd want to pick something in your reality that is always the case. And I know that sounds kind of strange, but let me explain. So basically, it can be something very simple. Like, say you always wear a watch, or you always wear your wedding ring, or you always have your phone, right? If that's a situation for you in reality, that you always have this thing, you literally never leave the house or anything without a certain particular item, then you can start trying to train yourself to notice when you don't have those things. So if you just think about it, you know, maybe let's say, since people are so connected to their phones at this point, let's say it's your phone, okay? I always have my phone. I always have my phone. I always have my phone. It's basically what you would do. It sounds silly and ridiculous, but you're going to sleep and nobody else is around, so you don't have to feel silly. Nobody even knows that you're doing these things. So basically you would be saying, as you drift off to sleep, you would be saying, I always have my phone. I always have my phone. I always have my phone. And then once you actually fall asleep and you begin to dream, if you have a dream where you don't have your phone, eventually your brain is going to be like, wait a minute, I don't have my phone. And you might look down, you might look around in your dream trying to figure out where's my phone. And you might not actually realize for the first couple of dreams that that's happening, but it's a process and you're training yourself to say, okay, in reality, I always have my phone. But in this situation that I'm seeing right now, I don't have my phone. So at some point, you're going to be able to be like, this must be a dream. Or like I said, you know, it can be your wedding ring, your watch, it can be anything like that. So once you're able to get to the point where you can start to notice little things like that, you know, even the very first time that you're able to say, oh, I'm dreaming, that's a clue, that's a sign to you that you're actually on the right track. And maybe you've already had that. Maybe you've already had a dream where you realized you were dreaming. And if you did, that's great. You should go back and you should think about that. You should think about how you felt. You should think about the dream. Where did it go from there? Once you realized you were dreaming, were you able to change the dream, or did you just go, hey, I'm dreaming, and then the dream continued on? Because even if that's all that happened, that's a good place to start. You're halfway there. But if you haven't had that happen, that's okay, because like I said, you can train yourself to get to that point. And basically what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to look into a lot of different techniques. You're going to have to look into a lot of different ways of doing these things. Look into a little bit more about what lucid dreaming actually is. And then eventually you're going to find something that works for you. Because like I said, this is not something special. This is something that anyone can do. Okay, you guys, so this video is getting a little bit on the long side as well. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and stop it here. Maybe at some point in the future, we'll talk a little bit more about the dream state and the various things that can happen within that state. But we'll just have to see how that goes. Also, you guys please let me know in the comments if you guys like longer videos. Like if you want me to do a video on a topic that's like an hour or so long, please let me know, because if you guys want that, I'll do that. But for me, I think that anything more than like 30 or 40 minutes is getting kind of too long. So that's why I always kind of break them off. But, you know, like I said, if you want that, then let me know and I'll certainly do that for you. Please let me know any additional questions that you have in the comments. You know, anything about precognitive dreams, lucid dreaming, whatever it is that you want to know, please do put that in the comments. I do love to read your guys' comments. All right, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. As always, thank you so much for listening. I'll definitely be talking to everybody again very, very soon. Bye.